for this week's discussion board, I decided to talk about drugs and drug interventions equals supply and demand. The supply portion involves controlling the source countries and incorporating drug market enforcement, which basically means keeping drugs from coming in from other countries, such as Mexico, Cuba, places like that. And the demand portion, in my opinion, is the most important, and it involves treatment and prevention. If we can treat and prevent these people from using drugs in the first place, it wouldn't be such a big issue. And goals for drug policy, there's 3 of them. Reducing the number of users, of course, reducing the amount used by each user, and reducing the amount of harm per use. Drug-related harm is divided into 3 sections. Health, and this is like if somebody has medical marijuana that they use to, let's say they have a sore back or they have issues that marijuana will help with, then they can do it that way. Social functioning is one of the biggest. These people in high school, early college, most of them just smoke weed and do drugs to fit in, because they've never fit in before. Like in high school, they were outcasts and stuff, and they use drugs as a way to fit in and make friends. And the last one is economic functioning. In 2005, 46% of those ages 12 and up had used illicit drugs at some point in their lifetime. 46% is an outrageous number. That it almost makes me sick hearing that 46% of those ages 12 and up had used illicit drugs. I couldn't imagine a 12-year-old using drugs. That's just ridiculous, to say the least. And there was a chart in the book that was from 1975 to 2005, and the top 3 uses was cigarettes, alcohol, and marijuana amongst 12th graders. And although the chart shows them decreasing from 1975 to 2005, but the numbers were still way too high in 2005. Like, yeah, we had made progress, but they were still way too high. And the FY 2008 National Drug Control Budget said that 36% of the budget goes to source country control, 28% to domestic drug law enforcement, 23% for treatment, and 12% for prevention. And I feel like we should take more from the source country control and drug law enforcement and put it into treatment and prevention. Because if, like I said previously, if you can treat or prevent somebody from using drugs, then it's not going to become an issue. And therefore, you're not going to have to use as much for source country control or law enforcement, because there's not going to be those users out there for the law enforcement to deal with. So I feel like the higher percentage should go to treatment and prevention. And this could be creating drug programs for those who are using more in-depth educational programs for children. Like, school has stuff like the DARE program and stuff like that, but I think we need more in-depth classes that can really show the effects that these drugs can have on somebody. Because drugs can ruin somebody's life, especially if they get started at such a young age. So that would be my starting point for policy, is to create a policy that requires these students, starting in middle school, maybe even elementary school, to have in-depth classes that explains the effect of drugs. And it's not going to help everybody. There's still going to be people out there that use drugs, because we can't help everybody. But if we can just help a small number of people, that's going to help correct the bigger issue. And lastly, I want to talk about arrests and imprisonment. In my opinion, there is way too many people in prison for small drug offenses. Like, if you get caught for a small thing of marijuana, most times you're going to jail. And that's why these prison populations are so overcrowded, is because we don't want to focus on the bigger issues like guns, assault, stuff like that. We're in a society that thinks all like drugs are the worst thing, and we're starting to crack down on that and arrest everybody for every little thing. And then people wonder why our prisons are so overcrowded, and this is the exact reason why they're so overcrowded. So this is another thing. I believe that we should stop arresting people for small drug offenses. Now, if they're trying to, say, sell and distribute like a kilo of weed, pounds and pounds of weed, then yes, they should be arrested. But if somebody gets caught with a small bag of marijuana or a blunt wrap, they should not be taken to prison, because that's just taking up a cell that could be used for somebody who commits a higher crime. So, although I do think drugs are bad, I do not think that the punishments for such small offenses should be intact, because we have people out here doing like murdering people, assaulting people, and the ones that assault people, domestic violence, half the time they get out and they're back in the streets. But you have these people doing years for small drug offenses. So that would be my first starting point, is to stop arresting so many people for such small drug offenses.